then?
So, if you're going to the EU, there is going to be far more things you have to reveal before you get into those countries now. So, first of all, this doesn't come into effect until the 12th of October. So if you're going away later today, you're absolutely fine. But there are to be new checks, such as you have to give your fingerprint, photograph, proof of where you're staying during your trip, proof of funds that you can afford the trip. So we were working out, you know, how exactly do they check that you have enough money?
How do they?
You know, do you have to look at your bank balance? It's an interesting one to wonder. And then proof of your medical and travel insurance for travelling. So these will be done at kiosks when you get to the countries. And it's a scheme that apparently they started trying to introduce this in 2016 after the Brexit referendum, I assume, but only just coming in from October of this year. And they were quite worried about massive backlogs for how much time this is going to take. Now, this is in the context that Keir Starmer said, we've got an exemption, we've got an exception from the EU, you can use the e-gates again. Well, I think this will take a lot longer than the time saved by some e-gates.
Also, the technology's outdated. I hate to say it, but 2016 was a long time ago. You know, AI is pretty much, you know, commonplace since then. And you have to pay €20 for your €20 for your visa waiver, which troubles me because if you're a big family, that's quite a lot of extra money. Yeah,
for a family of four, not to quote Jet2, but that's the Jet2 effort. That's £80.
It is 80. It is good maths. But does that visa last for? I'm thinking like in the last for. OK, fine. So at least once you've done it, you kind of get it, keep with it. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because this was due to come into effect last autumn, I think. And the French are quoted as saying that they were concerned of civil unrest because of the delays at their borders.
Yes, because we like queuing in Britain, but we don't like queuing for 7 hours at a time. And clearly, I bet you. October, which is, I think there's a half-term coming up in October. It's going to be absolute mania because it's digitising the border and, let's face it, when you digitise anything, things go wrong. So I'm predicting many front pages along the lines of 7-hour queues at Heathrow debacles.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and also we've had such easy travel with these countries. You know, France and Spain are the main destinations that Britain's holiday in. And so I think it will be quite a surprise to a lot of people. I suspect a lot of people won't be aware in advance of booking their holiday. Will they know about the visa waiver cost? Will they know about having to provide this information? You know, I must say, as someone that often goes backpacking, that's what I enjoy for my travel. I often don't plan. You know, I don't book a ticket home, for example. I don't pay for the full journey, full length of accommodation somewhere because you're sort of going on a whim. Now, I know families won't be holidaying like that, but you can imagine maybe lots of young people doing interrailing, for example. This is the kind of thing that will catch people out.
Even coming into this country, a friend of mine flying in from Canada last night texted me and went, oh, guess who's forgotten that they now need an ETA, like 4 hours before the flight takes off.
Yeah,
it's like, I'm in the airport hoping it gets approved.
It's so stressful going to America, isn't it? Because you just think, oh, have I filled out the form? Have I done it right? And now it's going to be like that just to pop over to Mallorca for some holiday.
The last time I flew to the US, kind of 40-minute queue, roughly, to kind of get through security. And somebody who follows me on social media sent me a reel from an influencer who was in the same queue. And they had posted going, oh, my God, it took us 3 hours to get through security. I'm like, absolutely it did not. Like, this is fake news.
I've been the worst person because recently, a couple of weeks ago, I was in Israel and I didn't know they'd introduced a sort of visa, basically just something you pay for. And I didn't find out till I was at the desk and they held the entire plane until my thing had come through. And so everyone on that LL flight to Tel Aviv, I do apologise.
Got main character syndrome.
Yes, I really did that day.
All the time. When I worked for the BBC, was leaving Morocco and they wanted some more ID and I foolishly just got out my BBC staff card because I come straight from the office and passed that and got delayed for a very long time because I hadn't declared that I was a journalist on the way in. I was just going there for holiday, but they now wanted to know what expose I'd been doing whilst in the Atlas Mountains.
I had that. I was leaving Lebanon and it was 3 a.m. for the cheapest flight and I said I was a journalist. I did not help as a journalist leaving Lebanon.
Talking about a bit of discourse over the course of this, you know, the French warning of civil unrest at the borders because of these e-gate situations, a bit closer to home, warns of unrest over the course of the summer. The front page Daily Mail fears of summer of chaos as hundreds risk arrest today.
Yeah, it's worth just flagging again that we are in for a lot of trouble because Just Stop Oil was disbanded in April. So all these people are sort of politically homeless, I suppose is the way of putting it. You know, they're twiddling their thumbs this summer,
Well,
wanting
they could just
things
not
to
block
do.
the roads, but
So
still.
what they're going to do, instead of gluing themselves to the roads, they're going to chain themselves together, just like in the Just Stop Oil days, and in protest to join the Palestine Action. And what's amazing is that there's a video that's been discovered of them encouraging the older ladies from Just Stop Oil to chain themselves to younger Muslim men because they think it'll be more exciting optics. So it's really strategic. They've actually thought this through. They thought, what will look the most impactful in the newspapers? Old ladies and I guess young Muslim migrants and things. So it's just so premeditated as to feel a bit uncomfortable for me.
I mean, if their strategy, which it clearly is for Just Stop Oil or Palestine Action, is to get publicity to highlight the causes that they're discussing, well, they are very good at it. So, you know, their mechanisms clearly work. The question of whether everyone else should tolerate it, I think, is a different one. And I think people are pretty tired of some of these tactics, especially blocking roads. But I think the question with Palestine Action, which is now prescribed, so it's illegal to support them, I think there is actually a real problem, a practical challenge for police. There's estimated 500 people could turn up in support at a rally in Birmingham today. Now, arresting 500 people is essentially impossible. And yet, if they don't, well, other proscribed organisations are ISIS, the Taliban. You can't set a precedent where people can flaunt their support and face no consequence.
And some people still question whether, you know, Palestine Action being prescribed as a terrorist organisation following that break-in of the RAF base, was that actually a terrorist act, or was that a failure of the RAF to secure its bases? And have they been victimised to some degree or overly kind of categorised as a result of this? You know, and I speak to a lot of people who kind of go, that one didn't make sense to them entirely.
It did cost £7 million in damage. I think for that reason alone, probably, you know, they should have come down hard on them, I'm afraid.
And it wasn't the first incident. There'd been one where some self-described members of Palestine Action had thrown paint over a Jewish-owned business in North London, and it had damaged religious iconography on the door. And so, you know, it was a series of things. But I do think it poses a... And actually, there is something blatantly absurd that Iran's Revolutionary Guard, for which I did an investigation for the newspaper about 2 years ago, found that they had tried to assassinate British citizens on British soil with agents of the IRGC. That group is not prescribed, and yet Palestine Action is. And now that's not a defence of Palestine Action, but it is a sort of absurd place for the law to be. And the other thing is that with domestic groups, these people could just get a new name with the same people and the same goals, and it would no longer be a criminal offence. And so is it really solving the problem of civil unrest that we referred to?
Or pushing it round and kind of muddying the waters to some degree. Let's talk about dynamic pay and gig economy workers, shall we?
Yes. So... many people that use the food delivery apps or taxi services like Uber or Bolt will be familiar that the price goes up if it's rush hour or maybe kicking out time at the bar. But it turns out there's an investigation which is shared in today's Times that doesn't mean that your driver is getting more money. In fact, sometimes it means they're getting less money. And trade unions are talking about how this is exploiting what they call gig economy workers, because while you're paying 20 quid instead of 15 quid for the taxi home, the actual driver, the percentage they get is being adjusted in real time. So they're not making more money while the company often is. And they're saying it's giving permanent anxiety because they can't work out what their pay is going to be. In
fact, they're actually getting paid less. So when you're paying £20 for your normal £10 Uber, the driver is getting paid less than they would if it was a £10 Uber. I mean, it kind of blows my mind. We were trying to do the maths in the green room and we just couldn't work out the algorithm.
And I've had on more than one occasion ordered an Uber or other Bolt or some of the other platforms, and the driver's gone, what did this cost you, by the way? You say, and they kind of... amazement of like, well, sorry, how much?
Yeah.
Absolutely bonkers. Let's move on to another kind of financial story, shall we?
Scam by me, this is The Sun. So The Sun has uncovered the most fiendishly complicated scam ever. If you want to break into an Oasis concert, I'm not saying good, there are two women who set up this scam, and you had to sign up to a WhatsApp group, meet them at the disabled entrance to Wembley. Then you had to have a special drawing on your hand. Then you were given a VIP wristband. Then you were told to stand in a certain place. a whole number of things had to happen. You had to transfer some money online, but it did work for 200 people who managed to break into Wembley. But the scammers have been caught. The Sun haven't named them, but we know that there are 2 women running the scam.
But it says that the tickets were £350 each for this scam. I mean, you could have bought a reasonable price, a reasonable access
If you could have
ticket.
managed to have got hold of one, that's the challenge,
And
right?
do you know what? That's why this is such a good story, because who doesn't read this and think, oh, it would have been tempting, wouldn't
Yeah,
it?
if you're willing to pay that for a legit ticket.
But it's so frustrating for those of us who couldn't get an Oasis ticket that, you know, no wonder people resorted to this. And for some people, it's not about money. It's just literally about accessing Wembley Stadium.
And they'd put up screens, hadn't they? One of the other cities' venues they'd played, because people were kind of standing on the hill nearby to kind of watch the Oasis performances there. It's, I know, 16-year hiatus. It pays off for creating demand. There's no shortage of that.
Well, there is a story in today's Times looking at how much money they've made, and it's estimated at £40 million, which, you know, for... I mean, I think the tour actually goes on for something like 18 months because it's going around the world to Australia, New Zealand and other places. But that's a pretty amazing payday for a few nights out.
I'm sure many siblings would heal rifts for that much money, wouldn't they?
Yeah, literally, I'd perform with anyone for 40 million quid, I think.
Who's your ideal co-performer?
Charlotte, of course.
Thanks.
There we go.
What would the act be? Just reading the papers on stage?
Comedy.
Comedy.
But only on a Sunday.
Only on a...
Yeah.
Well, it keeps coming back, doesn't it? It keeps coming back. Well, we appreciate you both giving up your Saturdays. Have a lovely rest of the day, a lovely weekend as well. Don't go anywhere. We've got all the day's top stories after this short break.
Hear that?